so much for giving me this opportunity to share some time with you and talk about your amazing story. Such an illustrious career and life. And I am glad that you allowed me to showcase it. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Why don't you start with your name and where you hail from?
My name is Clovis Jones Jr. I was born and raised in Dawson, Georgia, which is in Terrible Terrell County, Georgia.
Now, where on the map would that be in the state of Georgia?
It's in southwest Georgia, but if you go due south by 160 miles from the Atlanta airport, you'll be in the vicinity of Dawson, Georgia.
Okay, all right. Well, for what I know of you, you come from humble beginnings. Won't you talk about your life in Georgia and your family and what inspired you or what sparked your interest in going into the military and starting this amazing career?
Well, you talk about humble beginnings. My father worked on the railroad and was a farmer. He was reared by my great-grandmother, who had been a person who was enslaved in the state of Alabama. But she was a midwife and a natural healer. And they believed in making their own money, so they were property owners. And my mother was born in South Carolina. My father was born in Alabama. So I had 3 siblings. 2 are still alive. My sister, who's next oldest to me, was killed in an auto accident that I was involved in at the age of 3.
Oh, man.
So, and you know, my early beginnings, it was, kind of tragedy. My mother died on my 2nd birthday when I turned 2. She made her transition that day when I turned 2, and my great-grandmother, who came to live with us and take care of me and my sister Marjorie after my mother transitioned, she passed away when I was around 3. And my sister Marjorie was killed in this auto accident when I was about 3 3/4 years old. So, the women in my life that were closest to me were gone. Before I was 4 years old.
So you haven't experienced so much loss at and I mean, mind you were very young. How did that influence you, or how did that impact you coming up?
Well, I had survivor's guilt because I felt it was my fault that my sister was killed, because we were riding in the back seat of a car and we were going down a hill in the summertime in a temperature inversion. It was warm, but as we descended, it was cooler. So all I had on was a pair of shorts that had the bib on them. That was it. so I was getting cold. It's like, so I'm cold. So, and the lady who was taking us out for this ride says, Marjorie, you don't mind changing places with your little brother, do you? So she said, no, ma'am. And by the time we changed places, the car hit some slippery mud and rolled on the side. Well, this lady had tried to roll the window up, but unfortunately she had unlocked the door. So my sister fell out and she was crushed underneath the car. So survivor's guilt, so I was kind of a daredevil growing up. It's like my life was not mine, it should have been my sister. So that was how I processed it as a kid. And so it just motivated me that, hey, this ain't my life anyway. So I'm gonna go out and do things. I wasn't reckless, but it's like I was just adventurous and just wanted to, I guess, make the best of a life that I felt should have been my sister's.
Yes.
Yeah, that was how I processed it as a child, and even as an adult, I've had help with that. Traumas I've had, starting early life, Vietnam trauma. other tragedies in life, you know?
Yes.
So the thing is that we need to be healthy physically, spiritually, mentally, financially. And a lot of times we need help. You know, before we had a bunch of psychiatrists and psychologists, it was said that the blues was our mental health medium, because in those songs was a lot about life that people could relate to and experience.
Yes. There's a lot of therapy in that.
Yeah, yeah.
Yes. So you, who took care of you after that, being so young and losing those women?
Well, after my mother and great-grandmother passed away, an enslaved lady by the name of Susie Solomon came to live with us because, quote, her mistress had passed away and she had no place to live. So my father asked her to come take care of his two children who were still at home. So with that, that's who took care of us until my father married my mother who raised me. You know, so I have a biological mother and I have the mother who raised me.
Okay.
That I give credit for molding me into the man and the person that I am. Yeah, my father was.
What age was this that marriage took place?
I was 5.
5. Okay. Okay.
Yeah,
All
yeah,
right. Okay.
Yeah.
So you still had a mother for all intents and purposes in growing up in your formative years.
Yes.
Into your formative years.
Yes.
Okay.
So and Masseuse lived with us, you know, until she made transition. But he was an enslaved woman, and I had the good fortune of knowing 5 people in my community who had been enslaved.
Wow.
Yeah. So I have a whole different perspective than a lot of people, because I have a lot of history from their experiences and things that they would talk about versus things that they would not talk about.
Yes. Yes. So that sparked a question here. In having that experience, a rare experience, most of us won't ever experience. What type of things would a person transitioning from slavery into this new world, what type of things would they not talk about?
They would not talk about a lot of the horrors and traumas that they experienced, because they didn't want to pass that trauma on to you. But skills to survive and how to thrive were things that they imparted. Most of them were, I mean, they may not be able to read, but they could count.
Yeah.
Math, they were on it.
Yeah.
And also how you carried yourself, how you presented yourself was important to them.
Yeah.
I remember I would come home from school and Masu would ask, what did you learn today? Well, you know, you tell her what you learned, and then you have homework. Well, what's your homework? What do you need to do tomorrow? Okay, tell me what you're supposed to do tomorrow. And even if it was correct and it didn't sound right to her, if it wasn't convincing, it wasn't right in her mind. Because my mom would have to intervene and say, well, he's right. But it was about being the best. I mean, that was what I got from those people who had been enslaved.
Coming out of slavery and facing that independence and that self-determination and self-sufficiency was important for people coming out of slavery at that point. Would you say?
Oh yes, yes.
Yeah.
And passing on what they felt were skills that you needed. One of the gentlemen was Mr. Coot Weaver. He used to always come by when I would pass his house. He would usually be sitting on the east side of his house. He had a cane, and he would say, "Come here, boy. Let me pull your ears." I don't know what tradition that comes from, but he would do that. He says, "Now, go on and be a good boy." I mean, it was always about being better, being your best.
It sounds like it's just it was a way to connect with the kids.
Yes.
I mean, you know, let me pull your ear. It's just a way of connecting.
Yes,
Yeah,
yes.
yeah.
Yeah.
So, man, so you had the wisdom of people coming out of that, and I'm reminded of the things that I've read of the few Black Americans in the early 20th century who became like wealthy or millionaires or prominent, you know, or maybe not wealthy, but affluent. And I often think, wow, how could that have happened in, you know, like 40 years after slavery? You know, I mean, that's not a long time for, if you think about the time, what else was going on and the things that they had to thread through that was still detrimental to to black people in terms of, you know, just the outside forces, right?
Yeah.
So I'm always amazed at that, how they were able to pull resources together and come up with a product or a skill or whatever, or they already had the skills to you know, compete in the world financially and what have you. Did you ever think about that? And
Yeah. For example, my great grandmother, again, was a midwife, natural healer. I mean, so she made money. I mean, delivering babies, you know, black and white, didn't matter. This lady, from enslavement, did sharecropping, her other skills. They sharecropped to make money. And one thing that my family did was negotiate, hey, we keep our own books. Come settlement time, we're going to compare notes. We're going to compare numbers. So you're not going to cheat me out of labor and say that, you know, I owe you money.
yeah,
And once they got through with that, you know, during the middle of the Depression, my great grandmother bought a car, hired a chauffeur
what?
because she saved money.
Wow.
My father bought the home that I was born in. My great grandmother went on up to Augusta and over in South Carolina. She bought several homes and houses in Augusta, and she bought a plantation over in South Carolina.
That's amazing.
Yeah. So it was about being thrifty. It was about being aware that what you worked for and you worked hard for, and they said from can to cane, from sun up to sundown, and sometimes at night. Now you're on your own. You have to make your own way. So, in fact, the book There's a River by Vincent Hardy says, the folks in South Carolina says, we used to work for the lash. Now we work for the cash. So you had people who understood that the medium of exchange was money, was cash. So many of them were frugal, and it wasn't about just, you know, going to town on Saturday and getting drunk.
We free, let's party, right? No, it wasn't none of that.
Yeah.
So yeah, because I mean, you read about there's a lot of different narratives out there, and the prominent narrative up until recent times have been like, we came out of slavery with these skills because we were the workforce, right? And we were used and, you know, cheated. So to hear a story about a woman saying, hey, look, let's both check these books out, I mean, that blows my mind, because I wouldn't think that during that time, obviously I didn't live in that time, that people had that kind of agency. Black people had that kind of agency. They just took what they can get and kind of shuffled on. That's the narrative that people like to give about that era, that time coming up. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So yeah,
There
it's amazing to hear that.
There were some who did, but there were those who didn't. Because if you have the skills and you want my skill, then hey, these are the terms.
Makes sense. Makes sense. So for you, in seeing all this and being connected to that and moving forward in your life, how did that inspire you to do what you eventually went on to do?
Well, the whole thing is that the county that I grew up in, it was an echo of slavery, still there. Even though you had black people who owned their own property, who were educators and such, you had people who were really treated very badly. You know, in fact, there was the gathering place was on the south side of Main Street. The west side of Main Street at Lee and Main is kind of the black commercial district in my hometown. And it was so many black people who come to town on Saturday, you had to push your way through. and it was. They used to call it, and of course some people are sensitive about this word now, used to call it nigger push because there's so many black people. If you wanted to move in that area, no matter where you were, you had to push your way through.
Now, what were they do? Were they there for work or?
Well, no, this was Saturday. This was the time that people either went shopping.
Or downtime.
Yeah, downtown.
Okay.
They either shopping, or they just wanted to socialize, or just wanted to get away from wherever they worked.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And how were they treated in that regard, like on their own time, still maneuvering through the dominant culture?
Well, the thing is, because it was black people and you were in your own little space, you usually weren't bothered unless there was some horrendous thing that happened. So usually, you know,
they just left you alone.
yeah, they left you alone.
Okay.